Hi, this is Mike Young with Noble Warriors. You're about to hear a message entitled Logos, Basics and Beyond, presented by Rusty Davidson. Rusty is a Logos field representative from Atlanta, Georgia. This workshop was presented as part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference, hosted by Noble Warriors at Spotswood Baptist Church in Fredericksburg, Virginia, on Saturday, March 8, 2014. I pray the message will challenge and encourage you as you walk with Christ and lead your family.
Okay, it's time for us to get started, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and feel free to continue to complete the survey, and hopefully you'll have a few minutes even at the end to get that completed, and we'll collect those as you leave. Jeff will be at the door to catch those as we go. So appreciate you being here. My name is Rusty Davidson. I am with Logos Bible Software, and I started with Logos. Actually started using the software as a pastor about 13 years ago, and fell in love with the program, and now I work for Logos full-time, going around telling people about it and training guys and gals on how to use it. So let me ask you this morning as we get started, how many of you already have Logos 5? Anybody already have that? All right, got a couple of guys. Okay, so hopefully we'll cover some stuff that will be good for you guys to learn how to use it. How many of you have an earlier version of Logos? A few of those. Okay, so you'll get some stuff out of it. How many of you have never seen Logos before until today? All right, well, good. Well, this will be probably overwhelming for you. So hopefully not, but it'll be like taking a drink from a fire hydrant at times. But here's what I'm going to go through some things, and we're just going to kind of do a little bit of a study together, and that will introduce you to some of the tools and hopefully train some that are using it now on how to use some of those tools as we do that. But I want you to feel free to ask questions at any point. So if there's anything that you say, hey, slow down, go back, do that again, be sure to do that, because I want to make sure that you leave here knowing the product and being able to use it. So, yes?
Now, one of the things with Logos is I understand it's got a lot of components and parts,
Mm-hmm.
and you can sort of build it and that sort of thing. One of the things I'm thinking is, okay, how much do I want to spend,
Mm-hmm.
and how realistic, in terms of, you'll show probably all the bells and whistles, and I'm trying to think, okay, what do I want to build in? So could you go over cost as you introduce it?
Yes, we'll actually be covering cost a little bit later as we kind of wrap things up. But and we'll cover probably about 30 to 40% of the tools is all we'll cover today, and that will be more than your brain will be able to digest probably in the hour that we have. So that'll come at you pretty quick. So, but we'll just go through and I'll highlight a few things. And again, as you have questions about the software, then feel free to ask, and then we'll cover a little bit of the pricing. And I do have some price sheets here that we'll let you take a look at here in just a little bit. But I do want to introduce you to it. And again, I used it as a pastor, and it really transformed my preaching and my teaching. But what it did for my personal study was unbelievable. Because I was able to study so much more in depth and pull things from the scriptures that I'd never seen before, even as a pastor, even having gone through seminary at Southwestern. When I graduated from there, things I discovered by using the software were just amazing. So it really transformed my relationship with the Lord in the process. And so I want to share some things with you. And again, if you have any questions on the way, be sure to ask. This is Logos 5. It opens up somewhat like a newspaper or a magazine. Well, the idea is this, that if you don't know what you're going to study for the day, and sometimes we have that, we know we need to, and we think, well, where do I start? What do I start with? Well, this will help in the sense that it pulls bits and pieces from your library and presents them in a format like a magazine or a newspaper. So you can read things, and if you see something that you like, you can click on it and hopefully be off and running, and it will take you into a particular resource that you can see what's going on. This is a little blurry in parts, isn't it? It's not consistently clear. Let me see if I can. All right. Let's try this again. My vision's bad, but it wasn't that bad. And this is not my projector, so I'm not entirely sure how to operate it. Yeah, it looks like. No, it's there. Maybe it did. Let me try to put it up again. It did go, didn't it? It helps remember your password. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it's still a little blurry, but that's about as clear as it's going to get. As it works out, it's kind of blurry, isn't it? We'll have to make do at this point, I guess. So anyway, you can click on anything that you see on this this section here, and it will take you right into a resource. And so you can be up and running with the study at that point, because it'll open the resource. You can begin reading. You'll have devotionals. You'll have commentaries. You'll have bits and pieces from various books, and so that will be available for you. Now, on the left-hand panel that you see over here are some great tools for a personal type study. You can put in and customize your own prayer list. You can put in a reading plan of any book that's in your library. So for instance, if you want to read through the Bible in a certain amount of time, you can set up a reading plan to do that. And you can do it for as long or as short as you want to. It will break it down into pieces for you so that you can do that. So as you read it, we'll even tell you to start here and to stop here. As you do that, it will check off, and it will even, although it's hard to read, it will actually even nag you a little bit and let you know that you're behind. It's not calling you names, but it's just letting you know you're behind in your reading plan. And so you even have a little bit of accountability with that. So there's all kinds of neat things that you can do to help kind of build in your devotional time, and I'll show you some additional things that you can do as you do that. But I can teach you how to work the software with 5 words, if you can believe that. 5 words, and you can master the software. And I know you just sat through an amazing session, but hopefully you can remember 5 words. In fact, hopefully you'll say them with me here in just a moment. But those 5 words are this: it's topic or passage, then go. Because all you have to do is type in a topic or a passage and hit go, and Logos will do all the work for you. So we're going to begin by typing in a passage and show you what that does. So I'm going to begin typing in John chapter 11. As I do that, Logos is intuitive enough to show me some suggestions as to probably what I am looking for. So I don't even have to know exactly where it is to get there. And even if I don't know what book or chapter it's in, if I know a couple of key things in regards to that passage, the Logos will actually give me those suggestions. So in John chapter 11, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And so if I know Jesus is in the passage and I know Lazarus is in the passage, as I do that, Logos will go through and it'll find that and will even give me the suggestion of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. So I can have all those options available. I don't have to know how to spell Mephibosheth. As I get closer to spelling that, then Logos will be able to pull that for me, and I'll know what to do with that. So in this case, I do want to kind of give us an opportunity to kind of walk through the entire chapter of John chapter 11, just to kind of look at a few things as we go. And so I'm typing that in. It gives me the options, so I simply click go or click on that. And Logos is going to do about 50 to 60 hours worth of research for us. Now, as it does this, it's going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to give us multiple Bible translations here, and it's going to give us a resource here, and we can actually tell Logos how to do that. And so I want to show you how to do that real quick, because in doing that, it will, in fact, affect all of our searching. So for those of you who have Logos, you can prioritize your library or tell Logos which resources you want it to use. And it's very easy to do that, actually. So in the upper right left-hand corner is an icon that looks like an open book, and that is your access to your library. So I simply click on that. If I can actually get on that. And what it will do is it will give me a list of my library. Now, on the upper right-hand side of this box is a button that says Prioritize. And so by clicking on that, it's going to give me a list of resources that I have prioritized already. Now, if you haven't prioritized anything in your library, that will be blank. And it's this very simple process of just a grab and a drop, a drag and drop to build that section. So if there's a resource that I want, whether it's a Bible or a certain commentary, I can just come to the library, I grab it, and I drop it. And there it is in my library now. Now, what it will do in this case is it will show up as a third, since I dropped it in the third spot here, it will show up in the third spot behind my commentaries as the number 3 commentary. I may decide that I want that as the number 1 commentary. It's, again, a drag and drop. You just move it up the list, and it's there for you. Now, the nice thing is you can actually just grab one book of a commentary series, and it will move the whole commentary series in there, so you don't have to do all 60 plus volumes of Word Biblical Commentary. It will actually pull all that over. So if you decide then that you don't want to use that particular resource, you can simply right-click or two-finger click on the Mac and remove it from the list, and it will remove it from your prioritized list, but not from your library. So it's still in your library, it's just not a primary resource that it goes to. Now, that will affect your searching in that this is what Logos will look at first, and that's what it will display for you when you do a search. And so you'll have access to the rest of your library, but these will be the primary resources that it goes to. So that dictates then even your Bible translations. By default, it will give you 5 translations. If you only prefer or prioritize a couple of Bible translations, it will automatically fill in the other 3, or 2 or 3 with random, not random, but select Bibles. And so those will show up there for you. But again, you can select which resources you want to show up then by prioritizing your library. So any questions about doing that? It's a very simple thing. It's one thing that I would encourage you to do straight up. So if you know which translations you want to use, what Bible translations your kind of go-to translation, then that would be probably one you want to have at the top of the list, because that will always be there. Plus, when you prioritize Bible translation, when you see a section where there are translations or the scriptures spelled out, that will be the translation it will be in. So in this case, I prioritize the ESV, so that means anywhere you see a Bible translation, it's going to be in the ESV. So even if I hover over a biblical text and it gives me a pop-up of that text, it's going to show up in the ESV because that's my primary Bible. So you'll always have that up there for you. So any questions about that? Okay. All right. Another thing that you can do, and I'm going to interject that here as well, to customize and help customize your library in order to do searching, is to put your library in collections. Anybody put their library in collections yet? Okay. This will radically change your searching, and you can do this in 4 as well. When you do a search, Logos will basically search your entire library. Now, in some instances, that's okay. In this case, I've got a library of about 57, almost 5,800 books. That can take a little bit of time sometimes to go through, depending on what I'm searching for. There are certain types of study I may be doing where I don't need to search my entire library. For instance, if you're a pastor or a teacher and you're doing some exegetical work, you don't necessarily need to pull or go through devotionals when you're doing exegetical work. There's nothing wrong with devotionals. They have a purpose, but that's just going to slow me down in my studies if I'm having to go, okay, well, here's a devotional. It really doesn't get into the language or into the text the way I study in exegesis. So I may want to customize my library. So I can actually customize the library by setting it up in collections, and it's very easy to do that, and it affects the things that you see in your searching. And so to do that, to customize your library, if you'll go and click on the Tools button here, and I apologize for it being blurry, but it's right there. The very first thing under Tools is Library, and the first thing under Library is Collections. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to open up a panel that gives me the opportunity to name the collection. So in this case, I'm just going to call it ISI Fredericksburg. That's real original. Now, there's a couple of ways that I can build this collection. One is I can open up my library, and I'm going to open up in a tab here and drag it over a little bit. Oh, let's do it over here. I can see it better. Now, what I've got here is my library, and I can, by the same process I prioritize my library, set the preferences, I can build a collection. So I can simply drag a book or resource over to where it says add or plus these resources, drop it there, and it adds it to that collection. and I have it right there. That's one way to do it. That's probably not the easiest. It's really not the easiest way to do it. If you are working on a paper for college or a class, or you're working on a specific Sunday school lesson or a specific sermon, you could build a collection like that, and it would probably be beneficial. Otherwise, what you could do is add a rule. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is probably the most complicated part of doing anything in the software, is building a rule. The nice thing is, you don't have to do it yourself. So, what we've done is we have on our wiki, let me see, I think it's that one, yeah. On our wiki, we have some example collections. And so you can go to wiki.logos.com/example_collections. Don't worry about that. If you want that, I will send you the link by email so that you can do that. And with Logos, what it asks for is what we call a rule. What are the rules for building this collection? The nice thing is in the wiki you have those rules already spelled out for you. So if you want to build, say, a collection that has to do with archaeology, maybe you want to do some archaeological study in regards to a text or a specific place, then all you have to do is copy that rule and then come back to your collections and paste it in. And what it will do is it will automatically populate that library for you. So in this library, I have 228 resources that have to have articles or excerpts or specific works on antiquities or archaeology and those kinds of things. So now if I'm searching, I can search for things specifically in that collection. Now, here's one way that plays out. In this search that we just did, we have what we call a passage guide on the left-hand panel here. And you'll notice that in that panel, there's a section called commentaries. And it lists the primary commentaries that I've prioritized my library with, but it also has an all commentaries here. What I can do is I can go to settings, and in that settings, I can go to a specific collection now. And so instead of having excerpts or links to my entire library or all my commentaries, I can actually then go to links in a specific collection. And so it customizes that search to where I can then have everything that has to do with this passage that is in that one collection show up here. So it really helps customize your searching and make it a lot more efficient by doing that. So that would be the second thing I would do is prioritize my library and then set it up in collections. So any questions about that? Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is this on a server in a cloud, or is this on my computer?
This will be stored locally on your computer. If you have a Wi-Fi connection, we do back everything up on our servers. That way we can send it out to all your machines. Because what you get with Logos is you have a lifetime license that allows you to put on as many machines as you own or use. So you can have it on your desktop if you're running out and you can take your laptop with you and pick up exactly where you left off in your study, because everything you do in one is going to show up on the other. Same thing with your mobile devices, iPhone, iPad, Android, that kind of thing. So it all communicates together, but it is stored locally on the device, but it is backed up on our servers.
Does it eat up a lot of storage?
Depending on which package you get, for instance, the Gold package is about 14 gigabytes of hard drive space, so not too bad. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is there an app available for my tablet?
What operating system are you running on the tablet? Is it Android or Windows or?
Kindle.
Okay. Yes, there is a Kindle app.
There's a Kindle app.
Yeah.
And how much can I do with that Kindle app?
Okay. I'll show you. In fact, what you see in this passage guide, most of the passage guide here will show up in the app. So when you do a search, it won't come back with necessarily this setup, but it will give you the passage guide here. And we're going to walk through that in just a second, as well as show you some other things like the Bible word studies that you can do on that. So so we'll cover that here in just a second, but that will be in all the apps. So you have this, and this, I told you how to set that up because it's going to affect some of the things that you did. But now I want to actually walk through a study and show you how some of these tools play out. One of the things that you'll notice is as you look at the text, there's a couple of things here. One is that you see these colored boxes. Those are notes that I've added into the text. So if you like to write notes in your Bible, you can do that. And the nice thing is now instead of having it just in one Bible, you can actually have it now with you in multiple translations and have it with you wherever you go. So those are there, and you can simply move your cursor over the text or over the box, and it will actually show you then what that is. And that was actually something I did for somebody just the other day, was show them how you could link to an article. So, and it will even tell you the title of or what note file that comes from. So you can actually do notes within the software. You can do highlighting if you like to highlight or mark up the text, boxing, and you have multiple highlights within the text, and you can do anything that you want to, and it will store in those translations and go out again to all your devices. You can see there's all kinds of things like boxes and brackets and colors and different highlighter colors and shades. If you're familiar with the inductive Bible study method, even those markups are available within the text, and you can create your own palette of markups. So you can actually put your own markups in there as well. And you can all you have to do is highlight a text and hit that markup, and it will do that. One of the nice things about that then is you can also search by your highlights. So if you're looking for something and you know you highlighted it in a certain color or marked it a certain way, you can actually search your highlights that way as well. So it's very flexible to do that. So that's one of the things you see as you look at the text. The other thing is as you move over the text. Yes, sir.
Is that the focus for you guys?
No, we've got a section that's focused here, but the rest of it seems to be, as you move away from there, it gets blurry.
You're working at different angles.
Oh, okay.
See, the top of the board is farther from the projector than the bottom of the board.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So we looked at that earlier, but I couldn't figure out how to change that. So one of the things that happens as you move your cursor over the biblical text is you'll see that there's a little pop-up box right here. And what that does is it gives us the Greek or the Hebrew behind the text, and then it parses it for us. So we know where it's a noun, a verb, an adjective. It gives us the case, the gender, the number, those kinds of things, as well as the Strong's number. In this case, I've also got it set to give us Launita, the number for that as well. And so you really get a sense of the word if you're into the languages. The other thing you may have noticed is as I do that, what also changes in the information panel. And what we see in the information panel is that we get a definition of the word. We see how that word is translated throughout the various translations. And then we also have some lexicon information, and where you see the speaker icon, it will pronounce the Greek for you. Now, we're still working on the Hebrew audio, which is a little more challenging, but that is coming. But it will pronounce the Greek for you. And then, of course, you have, again, the lexicon information, as well as Strong's, and then some key verses that have that particular word. Now, as you study the text, you may decide that as you see a word and you get the information here in the information panel and you have it here, that you may want to study a word in a little more detail. And so it's very easy to get into the languages even a little bit deeper. I can simply right-click on that word, or it's a two-finger click with the Mac. And one of the options I have here on the left of this pop-up box is what we call Bible Word Study. And this is also in the app. So if you've got the app, this will show up. I simply click on Word Study, and that quickly, what Logos has done is gone through and has found every Hebrew word and every Greek word that are translated in some form of the English word I'm looking at. So I can see then a lot more about that word. Now you see a couple of things happen with this. One is that I've got a graph here that tells me that there have been, it's blurry to read, but there are four times that the word ointment or a portion or a derivative of that word show up. And as I move along the bar graph there, it will actually tell me which books those are in and how many times that word appears in those books. As I scroll down, it does the same thing in the Greek text, and there's 12 references there for this particular word. It shows me each one of those. Now, what I can do is in the text, and unfortunately I picked a word that there's only one particular word that's used. I can click on that particular word, and it will break that out word for me, and it will show me how many times that particular word is used of all the times that word is mentioned, and then it will list each one of those for me and show those to me. Now, that gives me a sense of the English word, but if I want to study the Greek or the Hebrew word, I simply click on it there, and now it's done a Greek word study for me. Anybody ever have to do a Greek or Hebrew word study before? I mean, it takes hours sometimes to do that, and in just a matter of seconds. Even if you're not a Greek or Hebrew scholar, even if you've not really gotten into the languages, this quickly now you can really study the original text. Let me show you what shows up here and how that helps you. One is you have the lexicon information. The lexicon is just a theological or dictionary is really kind of what it amounts to, so it's really another form of dictionary. It's the best way to kind of describe that. It shows how that particular Greek word is translated. So while originally we saw every place where it was translated ointment, we see now the other ways that it's translated. So not only is it translated ointment, but it's also translated perfume or myrrh. In this case, I can even see the Septuagint translation, and the way it shows up there gives me some root information. Again, it will pronounce those for me. And it even gives me some different senses of the word. Now, one of the really nice features that I really like about this that helps me tremendously is that it shows grammatical relationships. Now, translating anything into or out of English is a challenge. I don't know if any of you do multiple languages, but nothing translates into or out of English smoothly. Sometimes not even English. It's just a very challenging language to work with other languages. And so what this does is it shows you the grammatical relationships on how many times a particular word is paired with that word. So you see how many times that shows up and how the word changes as it is paired with those words. And that's pretty important when you're doing translating or when you're looking at a text. This is the nuance of a word, and sometimes it has a different meaning based on context. Context is critical, and sometimes the words it's attached to help us reveal context. So let me ask you a question. If I make the statement, I beat my wife regularly, what kind of statement is that? What do you get from that phrase? Is that a good phrase? Is it a bad phrase? I mean, what do you think about that statement? I beat my wife regularly. No, it depends on the context, right? If I say I get angry and I beat my wife regularly, what does the context say? Okay, that's a bad statement, and that's where most of our minds went, right? But if I say when we play words with friends, I beat my wife regularly, well, to you guys, that's really a neutral statement. To me, that's a good statement. For my wife, it's still a bad statement, right? It really depends on the context. So seeing what words are attached to it helps us build context and understand a passage or a particular word better. So let me give you some examples of some context within this passage. Now this is, again, John chapter 11 is where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And so we're just going to kind of skim through it. I'm going to show you a few things as we go and how some of the tools play in. As you may remember now, it starts with now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. And it was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So people send word to Jesus that Lazarus is ill. Now Jesus says this in verse 4. He says, this illness does not lead to death. At least this is the way the ESV reads. This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God so that the Son of God may be glorified. Now, what I want to do is take a second to look at this because several of the translations say it a little bit differently. So, for instance, in the New American Standard, it says this sickness is not to end in death. There's a little bit of a difference there, isn't there? It doesn't lead to death or it doesn't end in death. Well, how can it not lead to death or not end in death? And knowing the story, death is involved, right? That may be a place where we may want to look at a word and say, okay, if Jesus says this illness does not lead to death, what is that word lead really? And so we could then study that, and it will give us some information that here it says will not end. Many of the translations say will not end, and it's again, as you look at the context of that, it's as a predicate, it has to be about relating to death, and so we can get into that a little bit, but we'll skip down just a little bit because in this passage it says that Jesus loved Martha and her sister, and so he stayed 2 days longer. Now that seems to be kind of a contrast, doesn't it? I mean, he loves Lazarus, but then he's going to sit around and wait 2 days before he does anything? Well, that doesn't seem to gel, does it? Well, we read on. And so then after this, he says, let's go to Judea. And, of course, the disciples are worried about that because they have run into trouble there. And so Jesus convinces them that's where they're going. He says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. The disciples say, but if he's fallen asleep, why wake him? Like most of us, they didn't get it. And so Jesus has to be a little more clear. He says, no, Lazarus is dead. And, of course, they don't know that he knows this, but he does, and he reveals it to them. And so they go. Now, it says then that now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now, this term 4 days shows up again a little bit later in the text. And so I've highlighted here with a markup to mark it because I know it shows up in the text. Why does it show up a couple of times? Well, one of the things that we see as we read the text is that the biblical text is when there's repetition, there's something of note. And that's the way that the Greeks and the Hebrews wrote. So when they repeat something, it's because of emphasis. And you see that, for instance, in Isaiah chapter 6, when they are singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." Because God's holiness is emphasized. And so you see that again even in Revelation, where again, this heavenly scene, they say, "Holy, holy, holy." Well, God's holiness is the emphasis there. So, again, you see this. It says 4 days, and a little bit later it says 4 days again. Well, why is that important? Well, it doesn't really make sense to us. Why is it 4 days? Why do they emphasize that? Well, here's why. As you study the text, what you find out, and you'll see this in some of your resources that show up here, is that in the Jewish mythos or Jewish belief system, there was this idea and this belief that the soul hovered near the body for 3 days. And once that third day came, the body would begin to decay. And once the body began to decay, the soul could not re-enter the body. So you could not come back to life. And not even God could do anything at that point, because the soul would have to move on. So the emphasis here is he's been in the tomb 4 days. And Lord, he's been in the tomb 4 days. Jesus kind of blows away their belief system, doesn't he? So Jesus comes. He says that he's seeing what's going on. Martha comes out to meet him, and she almost do we get the sense of rebuke. But I want you to look at these statements. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." I always heard that as a rebuke. She's chastising Jesus for not having been there. But really, this is a statement of faith. You can heal. You would have healed him. You had the power to heal. And even says, "But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." So again, there's a statement of faith, that she believes that Jesus is able. Now, he says, your brother will rise again. She doesn't quite understand, talks about the resurrection. Jesus makes this great statement, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die." And so, again, she makes this confession, "Yes, Lord, I believe." So you have this confession here. Now, Mary comes out and does basically the same thing, saying, "Lord, if you had been here," but he's been in the tomb 4 days. And in this process, Jesus is deeply moved or greatly troubled. Now, I've highlighted those because those are some very similar words. And so, to study that word a little bit, what we find is that by clicking on the word and going to our word study, as we study that in more detail, and even pull up the word to look at it, we find out that this word really has to do almost with, in a way, just an angst of spirit. It's a groaning of spirit. It is an annoyance or a pricking that you have to do something about. As I get that, I wonder sometimes in my own life, how many times do I do ministry simply because it's what we do? Oh, the church has a program of doing this, so we go do that. It's our routine. Every time, at a certain point each week, we go out and we do this. We minister in a certain time each month. But how many times do we do things because we're deeply moved? As I looked at that a little bit deeper, you see a lot of times, especially in John, where Jesus did ministry because he was moved, because he had compassion. He cried over Jerusalem. And yet the very thing he was going to do in Jerusalem was for Jerusalem's sake, even though they didn't get it. So it's something we can pull from the Scriptures as we see that, as we study those words. Now, another thing that as I read through this passage, again, comes back to kind of the 4 days. Again, we see Jesus is deeply moved. To get to verse 39, it says, Jesus says, take away the stone. And they say, but wait a minute. Lord, he's been in there for 4 days. He stinks. This is one time where I really like the King James where it says, but Lord, he stinketh. It's smelly in there. We don't want to open that up. It's just, he stinks. But Jesus has the courage to tell them to do it anyway, and so he does. Now, one thing that we see in this is, and I was studying this passage as in a very kind of rough time in my life. I was kind of in between jobs. I'd just come out of the pastorate in a very rough pastoral situation, and had gone really almost a year without anything. And it was very challenging for me. I don't know if you've been in a point of your life where you're sitting there and you're questioning, God, what am I supposed to do with my life? I know you have this call for me, but I don't see it happening. How am I to provide for my family? How am I to take care of people? How am I supposed to do this thing you call me to do? And man, I was low. And I was studying this passage in preparation to teach. A friend of mine asked me to come teach at his church, and I was studying this passage. In spite of wanting to do something else, God led me to this, and it was because of this that I believe the Lord led me to this. Sometimes in our lives, and very real and true in our lives, we hold on to things. It may be a vision for what we have for our lives. It may be some goal that we've set. It may be some idea of something we want to accomplish. It may be just this idea or ideal that we have. It may be our career. It may be what we think our family should look like and how our family should behave. And as I was studying this, I realized that there were certain areas of my life I had not given to God. And yet when I read Scriptures, Jesus tells us to deny ourselves, take up our cross. And basically what he's saying is, you've got to give it all up. You've got to die to this stuff. Paul talks about dying, doesn't he? About how we die to sin. Well, sometimes we're not stinking dead in our spiritual life, are we? Not to the things of the world. I mean, there's those things that, God, you can have everything else but this. And maybe it's some kind of sin in our lives. Maybe it's something that's not a sin. Maybe it's just something that it's good in and of itself, but it's just not what God has called us to anymore. And we want to hold on to it. And yet, until we are stinking dead, guess what? We can't live a resurrected life. And the resurrected life is a much better life. And interestingly, God gets more glory through a resurrected life than he does through a healed life, doesn't he? In this case, because Lazarus had been dead, then all the people from Jerusalem had come to Bethany to mourn with the family. Now, if he had been sick still, there would have been Mary and Martha, a few family members, maybe a few folks from Bethany, maybe one or two from Jerusalem, but there certainly wouldn't have been the crowds that were there, so that they saw this. So when Jesus called Lazarus to come out, he did so in such a way that more people saw this, and God was glorified in a greater way than if he'd simply been healed. And so maybe in some areas of our life we need to put to death some things and make it stinking dead in order that God can resurrect something better. And I tell you what, when I let go of some things of what I thought my ministry ought to look like, and I changed the way I looked about things, I'm living the resurrected life now in ways that I never imagined. I'm doing things now that I never thought I would do. And the vision God had for me was much bigger and greater than the vision I had for myself. And so I want to encourage you with that. Those are just some of the things that you pull out from that. Now let me show you some tools that also will get us there besides just the word studies and those kinds of things. One of the things that you see in this left-hand panel are the cross references. The best way to understand the Bible is, what does the Bible say about itself? How does the Bible interpret itself? And there's two ways to do that. One is cross references, And that's what you see here. Again, some of those are spelled out for you. There are several that are just listed here. You can simply put your cursor over those, and it will give you a pop-up here as well as show it here in the information panel, again in your preferred translation. The other way is through parallel passages. Now, parallel passages are places where Scripture may quote itself or may have a duplication of particular stories. So you see this a lot in the Gospels. You see it in some of the historical books of the Old Testament. So you see how kings interpreted one story, but then you see how the Levitical priesthood interpreted the same story when you start reading Chronicles. So they have a little bit different perspective, but they talk about the same story. Some of the tools that we've added in to Logos 5 are included in our Bible sets that we call our Bible Facts data sets. And that's people, places, things, and events. And what Logos has done is gone through and we've tagged every person, every place, everything, and every event in the Bible so that you can do a full in-depth study on them. So if you're doing a character study or you're trying to study a place and get a little bit more detail about the context in which this is going on, you can do that directly through the tools. You can click Tools and come to Bible Facts and do a direct search. But if you're studying a passage, then that shows up in your passage guide. And so you'll see here that it lists the people that are mentioned in this passage, and I can see who that person is, and then beginning with the book, chapter, and verse that you're in, it will list every place in the Bible where that person is mentioned. So you have every reference to them. Now, if I want to do a more in-depth study, I can click on that person's name, and it will give me a pop-up box here that will tell me who the person is, some of the major events that happened in that person's life, any role that they may have fulfilled, whether they were a priest or a prophet. In this case, Jesus had several. It will give me a list of who their relatives are. It will go into the lemmas. So if you're into the Greek and the Hebrew, it will go into the lemmas surrounding their names and titles and those kinds of things. And then, since Jesus is mentioned once or twice, there's a list there. There's a referred to as section. So you can even break it down by how many times Jesus is referenced by a title of Lord or Christ or Messiah or by name. It even gives you how that person is mentioned by pronoun. So if it's a he, a him, a his, a her, a she, then all those are listed for you there as well. And if it talks about a person but it doesn't even mention that person by name, you can still see that in the text because they're implied in the text. And so Jesus is actually implied 2,200, almost 2,300 times in the biblical text. And there are pronoun references of Jesus 2,900 times. So he's mentioned a few times. So all those are right there for you. And any books, anything in your books that have illustrations, diagrams, those kinds of things, those show up here. And you can see those here. We've got their genealogy. You'll have a family tree as well. And so you can see then Jesus' history there. So you can go back and really study a person, a place, a thing, or an event in detail. Now, one of the things that we've also added so you can look at events is we've added back in a timeline feature into the software. Now, the nice thing is you can do just a biblical history here by clicking on this button, or you can do a world history, and there are over 10,000 entries, almost 11,000 entries in the world history. So you can see events that may not be specifically mentioned in the Bible, but impacted what was going on in the Bible. And so the nice thing about this as well that is really phenomenal in helping your study is that it's not just a list of an event, but now you can actually see that it's tied to resources within your library. So when you click on an event, you'll have the articles that talk about that event so you can actually study that event. And again, you simply hover your cursor over it, and it will give you the article that talks about that. So again, a way that you can provide context and background for what you're studying. As well in that, there are some tools that help you that if you're studying a passage or a topic, you can have some key words that show up within the passage. Now this is, to be honest, a crazy looking little diagram. I'm not exactly sure how they come up with that. They've got some kind of algorithm that designs that. But here, the gist of it is this, is that the larger the word shows up here, then the greater the presence or the prevalence of that person or that theme within the text that you've selected. So in this case, Martha is pretty prominent, so she's kind of big. Mary and Martha both are there. So you kind of see those within those passages. The colors and how they arrange that, I don't know. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But you'll see that those prevalent words are there. Now, you can also see that in a topical theme, and I'll show you that in just a moment. If you're interested in how the text compares, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. So if you've got multiple translations that you may use, we've got a kind of a morph river here, so you can kind of see how similar and dissimilar the various translations are. You've got a cluster graph here that shows the closer they are together, the more alike they are. The further apart, the more disparity. Another thing that you can do with the text is what we have in our text comparison box here. I'm going to click on that. And what it will do is it will list side by side the multiple Bible translations that you've selected. Now, it will take your primary Bible translation, the one that's your kind of go-to translation, and show it here. And that will be the standard that it uses. And then it will compare the rest of the text to that. So you'll have all your different translations. And it's a little hard to see on this, but there are some blue words scattered throughout these here. And what that is those are the words that are different than your primary text that you're using. So you kind of have a comparison of the text there. Now, you may have noticed as I've gone through these, a couple of things happen as I scroll through the text. One is that this comparison box changed. The other is that this box here with the resource changed as well. Because what happens is you can actually link all your resources together. So you'll see that there's a small A here, box with an A there and one there. What that does is that links it all together. So that as I go down through the text, what I know is that everything that shows up on the screen, even here, I can make sure I link that to the set. What that does is it makes sure that everything is current to the text I'm looking at. So if I'm looking at something outside of my selected passage, so I go, say, into the latter part of the chapter, which I didn't go into, then everything changes so that it's all current to the verse I'm in. So it's kind of like the pages turning at the appropriate time. I don't know if you've ever had several books laid out, and you're staying along, and you go, oh, I didn't change this, didn't turn the page on this commentary. I didn't change the book on this encyclopedia. So it's like the pages turning at the appropriate time for you. And so you can link that together. It's very easy to do. Again, you just click on the drop-down box there, click the link set you want to link it to, and then it will do that as you go. So a couple of other things very quickly is, and then I want to leave some time for you to ask questions, and we'll get you out of here a few minutes early. So those are all the tools in the passage guide. If you're doing a passage search, you'll have some similar things in a topic guide. So I just type in a topic of grace here, and again, as I type that in, it gives me multiple options to choose from. I simply click on it, and I'll have something similar to the passage guide. It will change things a little bit for me in that it will give me my primary translation here. It will give me multiple resources here. Again, I can tell Logos which ones I want there. And then it will show me some different things. Now, I have some panels hidden here. In fact, it automatically does a word study for me. So I've already got a look at what words are translated into that form of the word. So I'll automatically have that done. I have a definition panel here, so I can click and see what do the various Bibles, dictionaries, and those kinds of things, how do they translate the word. I can see key or related verses to that particular topic or theme. Will even give me illustrations, so if I'm teaching or I'm just wanting to understand it better, I can find a story or a quote or something like that will explain it a little bit better for me and have that there. We have media resources as well, so there are some backdrops, some PowerPoints, those kinds of things that you can pick in, and those show up there. And then you also have, in this case, it will show the biblical events that are tied into that. Now, one thing that we've added to Logos 5 is what we call our Sermon Starter Guide, and you can search this directly, or you can go through it through your topic guide. Anybody ever study something you think, man, I just don't know what to do with that? Maybe you're teaching a class or preparing a sermon, you kind of go, I read it, I see it, and that's it. I have nothing. We all have those moments. The Sermon Starter Guide is really a creative way to kind of look at things. It gives you different ideas on how to approach a topic or a passage. So what it will do is it will give you some themes for that particular topic or that particular passage. The themes that run through that passage will show up there. Or again, it will give you some different words for that. It will show you key passages related to that topic. Key pericopes, which are simply sections of Scripture or complete thoughts of Scripture or complete stories of Scripture. And then again, it gives you some different resources that you can look at. As you scroll down, it also gives you thematic outlines. So you can actually see an outline of how to look at some different things related to that topic. So, for instance, in this case, the face of God is related to His grace. And so we can see that in this case that the face of God as a sign of blessing or favor or grace. So you see that there, and so then you have an outline that goes along with that. So really some good, nice tools to help you be creative in what you're doing as you're approaching topics and sections. And again, you have a collection section here where you can change it from your entire library to specific collections within your library. So very quickly, that was a good portion of the tools and the guides within the software. There's so much more that you can do. We didn't even get into some of the different searches. But the nice thing in with the searches is if you will click on the search icon there, it looks like a magnifying glass. When you do that, the search panel, and I'm going to open that up where you can see it a little better, it will actually give you some examples of how to search. So if you're searching for a specific word, you just type that word in. If you're looking for a list of words, you can type in all those words, and it will do that. You can type in an exact phrase. You can even do a clause search where you can type in, say, I'm looking for the sayings of Jesus. I can type in Jesus and said. If I do that, it will pick up every place where it says Jesus. It'll pick up every place where it says said, and that's not exactly what I'm looking for. Or I can put in I can put in quotes, and I can get it specifically where it says Jesus said. Or I can put in a clause search where I have Jesus as a subject, said as the verb, and what it will do is it will pull in all the sayings of Jesus. So it doesn't have to say Jesus said it. It may say He said it, in fact, when it's talking about Jesus. Or it may not say Jesus said it or He said it, but we know Jesus said it. After all, it's red letter. So it may show up in red, and there it is. So it will even pull in those for you as well. So you have all the sayings of Jesus, or any other thing like God created or God made something. So the nice thing is you have a formula for those. You can even do Greek or Hebrew text searching. If you don't even know Greek or Hebrew, it will actually go from the transliteration to that. One thing I want to point out is if you are doing searches it's very subtle, but under all these blue words, the blue words here in the searches are things that you can change in your search. And it's very subtle, but there are some triangles underneath all of those, and you can then change and customize your searches so that you're not searching everything all at one time, but you can actually then customize the search a little bit. And it's within those that you can do some creative things. So if you get to this and you haven't changed those, look at those, because that will change the way you can study things. So for instance, in your basic text search, you can change it from a specific text to actually your markups or your highlights that you have. And again, this is where you can go from your entire library into your collections and search for a specific collection as well. So great ways to customize that. You also see there's multiple searches here. So you can do Bible search. You can search your libraries for specifically images or pictures or diagrams. And you can search, again, for clauses. You can do a morphological search. So if you really want to look at, I want to find all the nouns in a particular case, you can do that with a specific number. Or you can do syntax searches, which are a little more specific in the languages. But all kinds of creative things. So you can actually change those around a little bit with those. And you, again, have some examples here that you can kind of customize it with. So that's very quickly about 40 to 50% of the tools within Logos, and you can see that you can get as deep or as not deep as you want to get with it, but it will take you to that next level, whatever you're doing in your study. So someone asked about pricing, but before I talk about pricing, for folks. Are there any questions that you have about software? Again, I showed you a lot of stuff, but may not have showed you something you may have been interested in. There may be some additional things you're wondering, hey, can the software do that? Because then talk about adding your own books and resources in, but yes, sir.
Is it automatic for the update?
Yes. Yeah, anything for Logos 5, you'll get a notice that there is an update, and then you can choose at what time you want to update that, if you want to do it right then, or you can wait to do that. But you get, and those are free on Logos 5, so you get free updates on Logos 5. And that's true of all the resources as well. So if there's a change to the resource, if there's, say, a revision, for whatever reason, maybe typographical errors or something like that, all those will come in automatically. So, yes, sir.
I know you talk about your own personal library or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, if you don't have like an extensive library and you just want to do some research or something like that, will it give you where you could go, or is there so much, instead of searching your own personal library, is there?
Yeah, what it's going to do is it's going to pull from what you have available. So, I didn't repeat the question. I forgot they want me to repeat the question for the recording. But yeah, so the question is will it give you responses to links or something outside of your own library when you're doing a search? And the answer is no. It will only link to what you have in your library. Now, there is one exception to that, and that is on the timeline feature. So on the timeline feature, you may see events that show up, but it may not be a resource that you have. And what you'll get is you'll see that resource, and there will be a little lock beside it, so you'll know that there's something there, but you don't have access to it within your own library. So that would be the one exception in that case.
Can you purchase that?
Yes. Yeah. Can you purchase that? Yes. There are 40,000 plus books that you can purchase to add into the software. So it's the largest catalog of resources available in Bible study software. Right. Yeah. Now, the most economical way to build your library is through the base packages. That's the most economical way. But there are books outside those base packages that you may want to pull in, and there are sales that go along with those. There again are 40,000 plus that you can add into it. So.
It sounds very good if you're electronically or software gifted of a person and you're using it in your studies.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a lay leader and somebody you're trying to strengthen yourself in your walk and other members,
mm-hmm.
how much of this package do you actually really get to use? Is it like some of the other things we buy on our computers or our smartphones? We have a $4 phone and we use 10% of it.
Yeah, well, and that's correct. How much of it do you use if you're not, say, a biblical scholar or a pastor or a teacher? Most people cross the board on any software program use about 10% of the program, and that's of all software, whether it's Microsoft Word, whether it's an app. It's about 10%. What we found is that with the free training that we have online, with the free workshops that we give, we can get people beyond that, even for a layperson. To be honest, a lot of people think, well, this is software for pastors or for seminary students or for church leaders, that kind of thing. The reality is I actually sell more to the regular person than I do to any of those, simply because it will take whatever you're doing, and it will take you deeper, and it makes it a lot more fun and exciting and creative. There are things like the biblical places I didn't even show, where there's maps. They're all interactive, so you can zoom in and zoom out. You can measure distances. You can see the longitude and latitude of where your cursor is on the map. You can click an icon, and it will open up your browser to Google Maps, give you a modern-day satellite image of what you're looking at. So all these things help bring this alive. If you're a student or even preparing for a lesson, maybe you're teaching in a small group, or just want to add to what's going on in a small group, you can actually make notes or copy things into a Word document. It carries citation information with it. So all those kinds of things really kind of enhance that experience. And I think just from personal experience, even now, not even as a pastor, just as now a regular guy in the pew, it continues to change my study and transform my study, because I find that there's things that these rabbit trails I'm going down as the Spirit leads me and saying, hey, this jumps out at me, and so I start looking into that. And all those are good because even if it's not geared necessarily towards a specific lesson, whether we're teaching or whatever, it is taking God's Word in, and it's meditating on it. So,
like an internal biblical Facebook. Once you start with it, it will suck up your time. as you do, oh man, got me there. Next thing
it can do that.
Computer for like 3 hours.
Well, it can do that. It can do that. I mean, it is an addictive thing. It really is. And well, yeah, that's a nice addiction, to be addicted to studying God's Word, because that will transform your relationship with God. So, yeah. So.
So I just want to, if you're not like, a teacher or something like that, you're just looking to try to better your study and relationship with God. To get this software, is it without all the resources and stuff? Like I don't have a library like you as a pastor would have. And I'm just looking for something to kind of to help me out. Is this something that I would get that I would then have to, in order to be effective, to purchase other things or add different, grow my library? Or is this something that, as it is, going to help me, just to get a little bit deeper into the Word?
Yeah, to get deeper into your study, and the question is, for those that are listening on the recording, is do you have to have a big library in order to really take your study deeper, or what do you have to do to kind of get started to do that, I guess? Well, we do have multiple base packages that start with, say, anywhere from 200 resources to one that's got 26, almost 2,700 resources in. If you're a guy in the pew and you're not leading a small group, or you're not teaching on a regular basis or something like that, or you're not a pastor, then our bronze package, which has most of the tools and everything that I showed you today, has about 426 books in it, is a good package to come in and get your feet wet with the software. I think what you'll find is there'll be resources that you'll want to add along the way eventually, which you can do that. But that's a good package to get started with and get a taste of it, learn the software, not be overwhelmed by too many resources, but still have enough that you can get a good, robust response of information when you do that. So the bronze package, which is actually pretty much what I demoed, and actually what I'll demo here at the 12 o'clock hour or 1 o'clock hour, is normally $629.95. With the Iron Shopper's Hour, we're doing a 20% discount, so you get it for $503.96. Again, you get about $8,000 worth of books. If you were to buy them at the bookstore, it'd be about $8,000 in that package. And so we can even set that up on a no-interest purchase payment plan for up to 12 months. We charge a credit card or debit card each month for 12 months. It's about $51 a month to do that, not more than $52. And then at the end of 12 months, you're done. You don't have to pay again. It's not like you have to pay an annual renewal on it like you do with a lot of softwares. You own everything from day one. It's a lifetime license. So any books that come in that, or any books that you purchase outside of that base package, you have a lifetime license on. They're guaranteed to work within any version of our software that comes out. You don't have to pay for them to work in any version of the software that comes out. So,
how do we get that to multiple laptops within a family? Or?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. One, you can do digital downloads. We have digital downloads for Mac and for Windows, and you can actually put it both on at the same time. You don't have to have one specific platform. Your license covers both of those. Right. And same thing, you just go into the appropriate app store. So you go into iTunes or that Google for the Android stuff, and you just look for Logos Bible Software and download that, and then you'll just log in with your account information, which is basically an email address and password. Any of your notes, highlights, any of that stuff that you have on any of your other machines will automatically come in, and anything that you do then will show on those as well.
But if I bought it as a husband, and I got a wife and 4 kids, how many does the bronze package transfer out to?
Any package, any base package, you have a license. It's technically a single user license, but husband and wife are one. I seen somebody said that once, and we're not going to mess with that. So husband and wife are one, and any kids that are in that household. So if that's their permanent address at the time. So basically, minors is kind of where I'd say would be kind of a good drawing line. So any minors or any kids that have that as their permanent address, you can put it on as many machines as you own or use. So if you're allowed to put it on your work computer, you can put it on your work computer. If you're, if you have a company phone and they let you put it on your company phone, you can put it on your company phone as well. So I mean,
So we can work cross-platform.
Yes.
Like if I'm working at church, I'm on we're on PCs, but it's also on
a server.
a server.
Yeah.
And then when I'm at home, I've got a Mac at home that I use at my desk, and that's so.
Yeah. It will go cross-platform. So, for instance, I'm working everything from a Mac today.
Yeah.
So anything I do on here today is going to show up on my iPhone, on my iPad. It's going to show up on my personal Toshiba laptop.
Oh, really?
So it will go cross platforms. Now, it will be stored locally on that machine or that device, and then as soon as it has a Wi-Fi or internet connection, it will back up to our servers, and then it will go out to all your other machines. So you can actually work offline, and everything will store, and then the next time you have a connection, so if you don't want to eat up your data plan or whatever, then it will go across.
If let's say you're working on a PowerPoint presentation for a class,
Mm-hmm.
and now do you do your PowerPoint within this?
No, what you could do is you can actually send stuff to PowerPoint from there, but you wouldn't actually build anything PowerPoint wise within the software.
Do you have to copy and paste? Or?
You can copy and paste. With PowerPoint, you actually have kind of an export button where you can just say send it to PowerPoint, and it'll send it automatically to PowerPoint, and it will carry the citation information with it. So, yes, sir.
Rusty, what's the biggest advantage of going from version 4 to 5? I'm still overwhelmed by discovering stuff constantly there.
Yeah, there's a couple things in between 4 and 5. One, you may have noticed there's a different layout. So you have, I think you have with more depth on the screen this way. I think it's aesthetically it's better. You have actually a few more nuances within some of the tools. You do pick up, and I can't remember if it's biblical events or biblical things. One of those two you don't have in 4. You've only got 3 in 3 of those biblical facts data sets in 4. But you pick up the 4th one here. The other thing is I think it's a little more intuitive as far as where the tools are and how they work. 4 was such a dramatic shift. It was almost a paradigm shift on how to study with software. And to be honest, the tools were a little bit clunky, and if you could actually find them. So I think it's a lot more intuitive and user friendly. And I think it's crisper, cleaner operating than you have in 4 as well. So
let's say you bought the gold package today.
Mm-hmm.
Next month you're coming out with 6.
A couple things. One is that, one, I don't know when 6 is coming out. This has been out about 15 or 16 months, so it's still fairly new. The company's been around for 23 years. We're just now on version 5, so that gives you a little bit of a time frame. But the process from moving, say, from Logos 5 to Logos 6, or even 4 to 5, if you've already got 4, is that if you're moving into a base package, what we would do is we would take a look at what books are new to you in that base package, and then that's what your pricing would be based off of. You don't have to pay for the books you already own. Those will automatically come in. You own those. We're not going to charge you again for them. Also, the same thing with N5. If you're N5, say you get the silver and you want to look at the gold, we'll just say, okay, what do you not own in that gold package? That's what your price is going to be based off. Generally, there's a discount thrown in on top of that as well. Now, if you don't buy a base package, there is always a free core engine of the software that's available at some point. So you can have the book, you can have that. It comes with a few resources built into it, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's kind of the nuts and bolts of the program, but you can still do a few things with it. Any of your books that you own already in your base package, if you go into that core engine, that free program, you'll have access to those. That core engine doesn't cost anything, so it doesn't cost you to use your books that you've already owned in those.
From silver and 4 to silver and 5, you're paying for resources difference and then
Right.
a core difference, core upgrade.
No, you're paying a resource difference.
Okay, what about the core difference?
The core difference, if there are additional tools that have been added to 5 that are not in 4, there may be a small charge for those. I think there was actually from 4 to 5. There were some tools that they added in, and there was a minimal charge for that. It was like, they called it a minimal cross grade. You could actually just buy the tools. So I don't remember what the pricing was on that.
If
But
he's got 4 in silver,
mm-hmm.
right now, and he wants to go silver and 5. Is it gonna be
For him, it's going to depend on if he's added any additional books in there that show up in that silver package. And so it's almost, I hate to say it, but it's a case-by-case basis, because if you buy additional books, it's going to change that, as to how much that is. So,
$25 or is it $200?
well, from silver to silver, let's see, we had to take out, because of licensing with publishers and some other things, we took out about $3,000 worth of books between 4 and 5, and so we had to add in. We added in, I think, about $4,000 worth of books. So we actually added back more in. So the price difference was about $250 on average. If it was just, say, silver to silver with no additional add-ins, that kind of thing, I think it was about $250. So, so you're going to talk, again, because you're talking several hundred resources usually. You're talking, a couple $100 usually.
All of these different levels that you're talking about and the free version, do you have a website that would explain all that?
Yeah. You just go to logos.com, and that will explain a lot more to you. I also have some sheets here that will give you pricing on the base packages. It also gives you some highlights and some key titles that come in those base packages. So it gives you also the conference price, as well as the price, say, on the purchase payment plan. And again, that's not a subscription, so it doesn't go on indefinitely. It's for a set period of time, so at the end of 12 months, or on the two largest ones, we can actually go 18 months. Then you're done. You don't have to pay any more.
Is the conference price good for like 90 days or something?
No, unfortunately, the conference price is good for the conference. Yeah.
The guy needs to go home and discuss
So
this
now
with us.
with that, just so you know, now with that, we do have again, you have lifetime guarantee on all our resources, but you also have a money-back guarantee. So you have a 30-day guarantee. So if you get it, you take it home, and for whatever reason, the wife says, "What in the world did you do?" Or you decide it's just not the tool for you. We're not going to hold you hostage to it. We want you to have the right tool to be able to study God's Word. So,
30 days from the conference
so,
instead of taking it and mailing it back.
so what we would do is, again, we could do that. We won't even ask you to send the disc or anything back to us. We would just simply charge your money back to your credit card and let you have it back. So, and it's a no hassle return policy on that. So if for any reason you don't like it, we'll give it back to you. The other thing is, I think we need, for those that didn't sign in when they came in, if you haven't signed in, we need you to do that. He'll collect the surveys as you leave. I'll stick around for a few minutes if you have some more questions, but I want to make sure that you get done in time. I also have the pricing sheet, so make that available to you. And I do have the disc with me, so but I have a limited quantity of those.
I trust this message has provided practical encouragement to you in your journey with Christ. Please visit noblewarriors.org to learn more about how Noble Warriors works to help churches reach and build men. God bless you, friend.